From the very outset, Rashi had informed us that he intends to base his commentary to the Korach narrative upon the Medrash Tanchuma. Parasha zo yafeh nidreshet b'Medrash Rabbi Tanchuma are his opening words. The mashal that he quotes to demonstrate a distinction between God's reckoning and man's reckoning is lifted in its entirety from the Medrash Tanchuma. Rashi, however, to reflect his thesis of pitui, makes one cardinal change in his recording of the mashal. In the mashal of the Medrash Tanchuma, we have a situation of a melech bas of Adam, shemardu alav b'nei medina. Mem reish daled translates as to rebel. In Rashi's mashal, we have a melech bas of Adam, shesarcha alav miktzat medina. Samach reish chet also means to rebel, but that is not its primary definition. It really means to stink, to rot, and when used in a particular context, can suggest sinning against God and rebelling against authority. There is no doubt that what the group of 250, when they joined Korach, Datan, Aviram, and On, was wrong. Similarly, it was also wrong for the people to come out in support of Korach when they congregated around the Ohel Moed. But Rashi maintains that this was only a Samach Reish Chet. It was offensive, it was disgusting, it was abhorrent, but it was not Mem Reish Dalad, a rebellion against God. Had they been aware of the true agenda of Korach, beyond his arguments of bringing democracy to the camp, they would have realized what they were getting themselves into and not joined the rebellion. This then is the chidush of the mashal, and a response to question 1, in which we asked that having established that Elokei Ruchot is referring to a God who knows the thoughts of man, it would have been self-evident that by extension there is a distinction between man's reckoning and God's reckoning, and hence there would not have been a need for producing a mashal in support of this distinction. In response, the point of the mashal is not to illustrate the difference between man's reckoning and God's reckoning, but rather, according to Rashi, to highlight the point that Moshe was making in his petition to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the participation of the group of 250, possibly even Datan, Aviram, and On, and certainly the nation at large, the Kol Ha'idah, was merely a sarcha. It was odious, it was wrong, it was insubordination, but not a meridah, not a rebellion. It would also respond to question 2, in which we asked that if a mashal to distinguish between God's reckoning and man's reckoning was required, that mashal should have been presented by Rashi in Sefer Bereshit, in Avraham's plea to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ha'af tispet tzadikim rasha. But now that the point of the mashal is to establish that majority of the participants at their very core do not deserve destruction, it was a Samach Reish Chet situation. On account of the pitui, the smooth talking of Korach, we can see why this mashal will not have applied to the case of Sodom, where clearly in Sodom Avram acknowledged that the people as a whole were culpable, God's intentions were justifiable. He was pleading that this should not happen in the zechut of the 50, 40, 30, 20, and 10 tzaddikim that lived amongst them. For this reason, the mashal that Rashi presents in Bamidbar was not quoted earlier in Sefer Bereshit.